Right. When I was single, I was dating a girl. And for me, it was always important to be with somebody who enjoyed the outdoors and supported my love and desire for being outside and exploring nature. So, one day, I got my girlfriend, a girl I was dating at the time, as a gift, I bought her a kayak. I thought it'd be a good way to find out how much she loved the outdoors and supported this kind of lifestyle where we get out and explore.
Yeah.
I think she probably used it once the whole time we were dating.
Yeah.
Didn't care for it too much. And I was like, well, that answers that question. So when we broke up, I sold it on Craigslist.
Oh, there you go. That was gonna be my follow-up question. What'd you do with the kayak?
So that's what I'll call the kayak test.
And this is the trail connection. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Trail Connection podcast. This morning we are recording from the Juniper Springs Run in Ocala National Forest. And I have with me this morning Joseph Maydell. He's a good friend of mine I've known for some time now. We went to school together, and back then at that point we didn't really know each other that well, but we've had an opportunity for our families to get to know each other a little bit better over the last couple years. And so I'm excited to have him join the podcast as my first guest, and we're going to have some good discussion today. I think he's got some really unique perspective on outdoor activity. He's from South Africa, so that's why he talks a little funny, but that's good. I love the accent, and I'm happy to have him with me this morning.
Thanks, Tim. It's an honor to be out here with you this morning. Beautiful river run this morning.
So Joe, why don't you take a minute and tell everybody who you are and kind of what you do, and then we'll jump into some conversation.
My name's Joseph Maydell. I am an outdoor enthusiast like Tim here. I've always loved the outdoors, something my parents always instilled in me. I'm actually from South Africa. Some of my favorite childhood memories were camping in the African bush, going to sleep at night in my tent, listening to lions roar or hyenas laughing. Right now I live in Florida, but still try to get out west whenever I can, doing backpacking, kayaking. Also love being out on the ocean, just anything outdoors. Very passionate about being outside and exploring the outdoors.
That's awesome. And I didn't realize this up until a couple weeks ago. I shared the interest in having him come on the show and showed him what I was working on, and I didn't realize the extent of the experience that he had, and he didn't realize that I was doing a podcast or as into it as much. So obviously we got some more stuff we need to get to know about each other. But anyway,
I was just trying to get you to get me on the show more often, because I think what you're doing is great,
yeah.
And I want to have more adventures.
Well, I appreciate that. We'll definitely get you on any opportunity we can.
Thanks, Tim.
So today, like I mentioned, we're doing a little stint called Juniper Run, and it's about a 7-mile stretch of spring-fed river It starts up in a recreational area up in the Ocala National Forest, and we got a little swimming hole around the spring where it comes up out of the ground, and then it's a really narrow, windy, Amazon-esque feel trip for the first half of the trip. We're about 3.5 miles down river right now, and pulled off to record a little bit and get a bite to eat before we finish up our trip this morning. And it's been really, really awesome. I have had a chance to kayak on a couple different rivers around the Central Florida area, but nothing compares to this type of scenery and this type
Definitely
of run
not.
before. We were planning on doing an overnight camping trip, and that didn't quite work out. So Joseph suggested doing this run because he's done it. How many times have you done it now?
This is now my third time.
Third time. And I would highly recommend it to anybody who's interested. Very cool. I think if you have an opportunity to check out our social media pages or the YouTube channel, the video that we're recording, then you'll get to see some really awesome footage right here on top of the water and the perspective that we got this morning. So really, really cool stuff. Got to see a little bit of wildlife so far. Ran across an alligator, about 6-foot alligator, and a couple turtles, some fish. Missed out on an otter, which is something Joseph really wants to see today.
I do. Every now and again I look behind me for one. Apparently they like to follow the kayaks because we disturb the fishes, and then it makes it a lot easier for them to catch the fish.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's cool. So, but this area out here is very remote. We've heard a lot of stuff moving along the banks as we've come through and as we've been talking. But I'm sure if we were just kind of cruising along quietly, we probably would see a whole lot more. But really, really incredible piece of scenery to experience. So I'm excited to be out here today.
And there is a lot of wildlife out here. I heard we've got panther out here. We've got black bear. I've got python.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot of interesting stuff that we might still be fortunate enough to see later.
Yeah.
What I wanted to talk about real brief that we might see today is we might actually see Elvis today. And from what I've heard, he's still alive and well. Elvis is an alligator who lives on this river. He is 14 feet long and currently weighs 800 pounds.
Wow.
So I think it'd be really neat to see him, Tim, but I don't know if I want to get too close to him.
Yeah. Well, I've had the opportunity to do some gator hunting in the last few years, and the biggest one that I've ever seen taken on the boat with me is 12'6".
Wow.
So it's amazing how much a couple feet can add to the size and the girth of one of those animals. But
yeah,
a 14-foot alligator is pretty much a dinosaur. They're huge. Well, it's definitely looking like it's starting to open up a little bit. Now if you're watching the video, then you can see that this run has been pretty narrow, probably not more than 10 feet wide, and now we're starting to open up a little bit more to 16, 18 feet wide in some areas, and I imagine as we get a little further down the line, closer to the main body of the river, it'll open up quite a bit more. But I got to tell you, Joseph, I'm pretty impressed so far. This is a really neat run.
Yeah.
Especially, I like the way that this is really just a stream that's meandering between palms and all kinds of like almost tropical type vegetation, and it really does give you the feeling that you're kind of navigating some backstream in another country or somewhere in the Amazon.
It's got a very wild feel to it.
Yeah.
And it's 7 miles of beautiful wilderness river trail.
So it was an interesting segue with you using that term, river trail. When I first put this concept together and I was talking about hiking and backpacking and camping, a lot of that type of stuff doesn't usually associate with kayaking or any kind of like river activity typically. But I think the concept of just getting outdoors and doing things that you love is all inclusive to what the Trail Connection's all about. And like I mentioned in the first episode, you know, this is something that I grew up doing as a teenager and really enjoyed. And that was kind of the first thing that I jumped back into when I was trying to find something to escape to. And so I definitely wanted to incorporate that into the show. And I think that using that term is a perfect way to describe what we're doing. Because these not all trails have dirt. I've used that caption before, but there's just some really incredible places that you can explore that you can only get there by the use of water. So yeah, we've enjoyed our morning so far. Haven't quite had an opportunity to find any swimming holes. It's pretty shallow water. Most of the river that we've been on this morning has been between 12 and 18 inches deep, maybe a little deeper in some areas, but not too many low spots. So something that I love doing, Joseph, I don't know if you have had any experience doing it before, but every opportunity I get to get on the water, I'm always looking for a tall tree and a deep hole to jump into in the water.
You're basically trying to find where Elvis lives.
I guess so. Have you had any experience jumping out of trees or doing anything like that growing up?
Not trees. I've swung off of swings from trees into rivers, and I've done cliff jumping, but I've never just found a tree and just decided to jump off of it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that was something growing up, you know, I loved doing, and me and my buddies, anytime we had a chance to go to the river, we would. And most of the areas that we frequented were like tubing rivers and more popular spots. So the human traffic was a lot greater on these rivers. So you didn't really have too much of a chance of disturbing wildlife or anything like that. And most of the areas were pretty well defined. It's safe. And that's something, kind of the reason why I wanted to bring it up today is just kind of a public service announcement, I guess, for when you're planning on doing any kind of adventure sport like that, is to just use some caution. So my perspective on that has definitely changed since I was younger. Before I grew up, you know, just kind of any opportunity I had, I'd jump out of the tallest tree I could find. But now that I've grown up and gotten some kids, I think that we need to be a little bit more cautious about those types of activities and stuff. And my dad would always kind of warn against that growing up. And I'm not going to say I didn't take him seriously, but I definitely didn't heed the warnings as much as I should have. But there's a lot of potential danger, and I'm sure you have experience as well.
Yes, I know scenarios where people have been severely injured.
Yeah. So, you know, one of the things that kind of made me decide to bring this up and talk about it was there's a swimming hole not too far from where I grew up that we would go to. It's pretty much just a sinkhole that filled up with water. They called it a spring, but it was not a spring. It was very black and kind of a gross body of water to be swimming in. But my friends and I would go, and there's a pretty tall tree that would overhang the pool there, and we'd climb up and jump in. And this one particular day, there was a park ranger that came by and kind of was real nice about the whole thing, but politely asked us to leave. And as we were packing up our stuff, just kind of let us know that over the past several years, they had pulled out several people out of that hole because the way that the tree grew right on the edge of the water kind of created a shelf of roots under the water that you couldn't see. And kind of your natural tendency when you jump in is to kind of swim back towards the shore as you're coming up, and that's how a couple folks have gotten caught up under there. And that really hit home with me. I thought about it a lot, and it scared me to death, to be honest. And so pretty much since my freshman year in college, that was something that I don't do anywhere and everywhere. It's kind of very select areas. So, but on a day like this, where you got plenty of clear water and plenty of opportunity to jump, then I think it'd be something fun we could try.
One thing I do want to caution you though is this is a wilderness trail, and if we get caught doing that, we get a $1,500 fine.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah.
You neglected to mention that earlier.
There's a couple of things.
So we will not be tree jumping today.
There's a couple of things I forgot to tell you too.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's all right. So speaking of that, this being a wilderness trail and being a pretty remote piece of land out here, they're very adamant about what we bring in.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were almost searched for what
we were
searched for what we brought in. They wanted to try to avoid any kind of plastic bottles or wrappers or anything that might get left behind. And I think that even though that can be a little frustrating sometimes, I'm okay with that because I know Joseph feels the same way. Like this area is such a beautiful area to experience, and I'd hate to leave it in a different state than the way we found it.
And it's not really that they're worried that we're going to throw the wrappers away. It's like if we capsize, which is very easy to do on this river because it's so narrow and there's so many low overhanging branches, it'd be very easy for us, if there's anything like a wrapper or bottle in our kayak, for that to get thrown out.
Yeah, so I don't know, I'm sure most of the people who are tuning into this are very aware of the Leave No Trace movement and the organization. And they're a group that really focuses on leaving these trails exactly the way we found them, even to a point of not leaving the defined trail to disturb the ecosystem around the area. And that was something that we were talking about a little bit ago while we were kind of coming down the river some of this area under the water has probably never been disturbed, you know, with human traffic or anything like that. It's mostly just been flowing. And so it's something you don't really think about. And anytime we take some opportunities to enjoy the nature around us, we need to make sure that we're leaving it the way that we found it and being a good steward of what we're blessed with.
It really is. And one thing that's really beautiful about this river, there's no invasive species growing on the banks. There's no litter in the river. It's just, you just feel like you're just out enjoying God's creation.
Yeah. And another thing that got me thinking about this leaving nature the way we left it, my daughter loves flowers and loves picking them, and she's always asking me every time she sees one. She points it out and then she'll say, "Daddy, can I get one?" And I'm always wanting her to, but I've always told her that no, we can't take them, because if we pick a flower and the next person picks a flower, eventually nobody's going to get to enjoy what we get to see. So it's something that I'm trying to teach my kids, and even though it's tough and it seems dumb to tell them no, you can't pick a flower. It's not, because it's disturbing, you know, what's there. And even something as simple as picking up a rock and skipping it in a lake. I mean, there's tons of folks that enjoy doing that as a little keepsake, but I've seen recently, some of these trips out west in some of these national parks that have the beautiful rocks laying in the bank of the river. If everybody took one of those, then there wouldn't be one. There wouldn't be that site left for others. So, big supporter of that. Long-winded sentence to say that I'm a big supporter of that movement, and looking forward to teaching my kids and bringing them up the same way.
And I'm a huge proponent of being a good steward of the outdoors when you're enjoying it. There's nothing that will make you lose your enjoyment of a trip more rapidly than watching somebody deface a beautiful scene when you're out in the wild. And I witnessed that. In fact, a few years ago I was out in Utah and climbed out to Arches National Park, to Delicate Arch, and somebody was actually engraving their name on the arch whilst everybody was watching it. And it was honestly very devastating to see just that lack of stewardship of what we have been given.
Yeah, that's disappointing. But I mean, it's very common. So that's why folks like we met this morning that searched our bags have the jobs that they do, and I appreciate it, even though it can be a little frustrating sometimes. And for those who are unprepared like myself, who brought tons of stuff that was in disposable containers, basically everything I had, it is a little frustrating, but
Well, talking about keeping everything you have, why don't you tell me about this dry bag that you have here?
Okay, so I've got about a medium-size dry bag that I've got most of my expensive recording gear in, and cameras and all that stuff to try to keep dry. And it's a plastic / canvas type material that's used for that particular purpose. And I don't know about you, but I've got mixed feelings about dry bags. For me, I've had only bad experiences with them, which isn't much. It isn't much experience, but every time I've used it so far, I've gotten the stuff inside wet. So what's your experience with them?
I have used them extensively. I'm an avid sailor, and I've used them a lot on sailboats because there's a lot of spray and wind. But they are a challenge to use. The biggest challenge that I faced, especially sailing, is you're typically wet. So then when you go to access stuff in your dry bag, your hand might be damp or wet, and so then everything inside your dry bag becomes damp and wet, and that moisture is pretty much trapped inside there.
Yeah, so that's been my experience. But they do serve a good purpose, especially whenever you plan well and make sure that you have the stuff that you need to access in there, when you access it is at the right time and not in the middle of a torrential downpour or stuff running down your arms and your hands while you're trying to access things inside.
And I did have 2 tips I wanted to share when it came to dry bags.
Okay.
If you're out in the wild and you accidentally get the inside of your dry bag wet, especially on a nice warm sunny day, just take the bag, turn it inside out. It dries really quickly. The other tip, when I'm backpacking in an area with bears, I actually will take my dry bag and stuff it with all my food at night and hang it from a tree.
Okay.
Always make sure it's at least a couple 100 yards from your campsite. You want the bears hanging around your food under the tree, not your tent. But it really works a lot better, in my opinion, than a bear canister. Not saying that there aren't times you need a bear canister,
right?
Especially if you're out west and there's a lot of boulders and a few trees, or if there's a lot of grizzly bear activity, sometimes the canister is the best option. Yeah,
that's a really good suggestion. I hadn't thought about that before, and that's going to be a topic we'll discuss later on down the road on this show, is multi-purpose items and finding ways to make things work in other capacities. And I will probably do that. We're going to head up on an Appalachian Trail next week, and I'll probably end up taking this bag for my food sack and use it as a bear bag instead. So good suggestion. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
All right, so we're gonna be wrapping up here in a couple hours. Like I mentioned earlier, we had planned on doing an overnight trip, but since we're stopped for lunch, we can go ahead and talk about this. So on a scale of 1 stick of beef jerky to what was the Mountain House flavor that you like?
I really like their chicken and mashed potatoes.
All right, the chicken and mashed potatoes. So on a scale of 1 stick of jerky to chicken and mashed potatoes, how confident are you that you could do an overnight trip and catch your dinner, or would you need to be eating said meal?
To be honest with you, I'll be eating. I'll be enjoying my Mountain House meal.
Yeah.
Whilst you sit on the bank of a river, casting your line, and every time you catch a fish, actually I see some right here, an alligator's going to come and snatch it from you before it even pulls you up on the bank, and I'll just be sitting on the bank, just enjoying my meal.
With a full stomach, laughing at me.
I love, there's nothing better than after a long day of backpacking or hiking or mountain biking, having a full stomach, curling up in your nice cozy sleeping bag and going to bed. I do not want to be hungry on the trail. Yeah,
no, I definitely agree with that. I think for me, I would definitely go the same route and make sure I have a backup plan, because although I come from a family that's got a reputation of being outdoorsmen, my brother could catch a fish in a bathtub, is what I like to say, but I am not cut out of the same cloth. I think I'd be lucky if I could catch a fish in an aquarium, but I definitely would bring a backup plan. But I would want to try to find something to catch, just for the challenge of it. But I definitely would not be relying on a stick of jerky for sure. It'd be a full meal. So
I think it also depends on where you're camping or hiking. What are the rivers there with abundant supply of fish?
Yeah. So, real quick before we wrap up, why don't you tell us a little bit about growing up in South Africa and what you experienced out there in the wild?
Well, it's a beautiful country. Tremendous amount of wildlife, especially in the national parks. A lot of game, a lot of predator type animals like lions, hyenas, things of that nature. One thing that was very different about the national parks in South Africa as opposed to here in America is you couldn't just camp anywhere. It's kind of like at Jurassic Park. You had these special enclosed areas with electrified fences,
Yeah.
and you had to be inside them before it was dark. If you're outside the enclosed area after dark, there's a good chance that was your last day. so, so yeah, I remember making sure we're always in the enclosed area before dark, making our camp. But man, going to bed at night, listening to lions roar, listening to hyenas laugh, that was phenomenal.
I bet.
Yeah, hearing those sounds. But very thankful for being inside my electrified fence, Jurassic Park safety barrier enclosure.
Yeah.
And then again, during the day, the only time you're allowed out of those areas is in your vehicle.
Okay.
You're never allowed outside your vehicle. Very few national parks you can do actually backpacking and hiking, unless you're with a armed trail guide. And by armed, I mean huge weapon.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Basically a rifle powerful enough to bring down a bull elephant.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So have you ever had any kind of encounter with a big piece of wildlife like that?
The only questionable encounter I ever had was with a male bull elephant.
Okay.
And it wasn't my own. It wasn't because of something that I was doing wrong. But I was with some friends in a minivan. And in the national parks in South Africa, you're not allowed out in the park at night. And during the day, you're allowed in the park as long as you stay in your vehicle. You're never allowed to exit your vehicle. And then before it gets dark, you have to be in one of the designated camping areas, which is protected by this electrified fence.
Okay.
Now, unfortunately, in this story, the person driving the van was running behind schedule. So we were late getting back to a designated camping area. And we were rushed. And there was a bull elephant next to the road, and we came around this corner faster than we probably should have been going. And this bull elephant was standing next to the road, and he kind of took offense at us. So the driver stopped the van because, bull elephants are very dangerous. They will trample you to death in your vehicle.
Wow.
And so we just basically had to sit there and wait for this bull elephant to wander off.
Wow.
But unfortunately, this bull elephant, he had no such intention. He kind of kept one foot on the road, essentially saying, "This road is mine." And every time we tried to approach him, he would turn and flap his ears at us, and we'd back off.
Wow.
And now it's starting to get dark, and we need to be in the designated camp area. So the driver decides to be a little more aggressive at trying to pass the bull. Approaches a little closer, and the bull elephant actually starts to charge us.
Wow.
We're facing this bull elephant, and he's charging us head on.
That had to be terrifying.
Yes. So the driver is freaking out. He puts the vehicle in reverse and pops the clutch. Except he doesn't realize in his haste he put the vehicle in first gear instead of reverse.
Oh, wow.
So we've got this bull elephant charging at us. He pops the clutch, and we go flying forwards instead of backwards.
Oh my goodness.
Straight at this bull that's charging us. Now, I don't know, maybe it was better that this happened, because what actually happened, the bull wasn't expecting us to come at him.
Yeah.
And when he saw us come flying towards him, he actually was like, "Wait a minute, what are you guys doing? You're supposed to be running away from me."
Yeah.
And so he actually he stopped right in front of the minivan, and then he wandered off into the bushes. But
Wow.
that is probably the scariest I've ever been
Wow.
when it comes to African wildlife.
That's crazy. I can't even imagine coming across something like that. I've seen animals like that in a zoo for sure, but kind of that same sense of security behind the
Yeah.
big walls or the electrified fences, you know.
And I think it comes back, like, you got to be a good steward of your environment. You got to know what you're getting into. You got to be prepared. These types of situations that you can find yourself in, a lot of times the situations where people find themselves in when they get injured or don't survive, there was a lot of things that they did wrong leading up to those situations.
Yeah.
If you're out enjoying the wild and you're very conscientious of what you're doing, there's very few situations where you have to fear for your well-being.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it just goes to speak about kind of what we've been talking about already, is just anytime that you are engaging in outdoor activity, there are different cautions you have to have and different risks that you have to assess, but you know, there's a lot of benefit to being outdoors, and as long as we're out and about and paying attention and being aware of what's around us and just thinking about the what ifs, there's a lot of enjoyment that can come from spending a little bit of time outside. So, all right, well, we're going to paddle on down a little bit, and
hopefully we'll see some otter.
Yeah, hopefully we'll see some more otter, and
hopefully no coral snakes.
Yeah, we might chat a little bit more.
Do you remember the remember how I identify if a red, white, and a red, black, and yellow snake is dangerous or safe?
Black and yellow kill a fellow, red and black friend of Jack. Right?
Yep, you got it. See, you're prepared. You're ready.
I'm ready. I'm ready for bull elephants. All right, so in case we don't get an opportunity to chat a little bit more, I want to go ahead and do my shameless plug here. So if you haven't already, check out the Trail Connection podcast Instagram and Facebook page, as well as our YouTube channel. We're going to have some really cool content coming out for this episode. Having an additional person out and about with me and some extra camera angles. We got some really cool footage, so be sure to check that out. And also, if you haven't already had a chance to check out our Patreon page, please go take a look at that and watch the short video at the beginning that kind of explains what Patreon is and how you can help support this show if you're a fan. And I deeply appreciate it. I'm already blown away by the amount of support that we've gotten just being as young as we are. And really, really excited to see how this is going to develop and move and change as we continue to get going. So next week, I'll give you a little preview. We are going to be filming on the Appalachian Trail. I'm going up with another buddy of mine. We're going to do a couple days at Springer Mountain in Georgia at the trailhead, and we'll be filming the next 2 episodes on that trip. So those will be coming up down the line.
Well, Tim, thanks so much for having me out today.
Yeah, I want to thank Joseph for taking the time and coming out. And this was very special because he was just out in Utah last week taking some time off work. So I definitely appreciate the extra time that he's taken to dedicate to this. And I've enjoyed it. We're gonna make some cool memories today, and I'm excited to have you part of the Trail Connection community. And thanks again, Joseph. It was fun.
Thanks for having me out today, Tim.
I'm Tim Garland. This is the Trail Connection Podcast.